Every step I take, I move my truth. Every time they tell me stop, I use every comment, hate that makes my fuel. Gather up my energy and boom, I hear them talking, saying the way that I move is so reckless. That is a part of my mind I've been blessed with, giving my blood, so I am relentless.
Well, here we are. This is the Keep Hammering Collective Roadshow edition. And we're in Michael Chandler's studio. Thank you.
Nashville, Tennessee, man. Just
I
got
know.
a little workout in.
Oh, man.
Well, you invited me out to, Springfield, Oregon.
Yeah.
So it's good to have you here in Nashville.
Well, thank you for letting me use this. And we can get an update and a recap on, we had an awesome workout, a little bit out of my normal. Normal, I told your trainer, what's his name?
Jeremy.
Jeremy, yeah.
Yep.
Stud. That was fun. But I told him, like, my normal warm-up is just to run slow.
Yeah.
And then start running a little faster, and then you're running.
Yeah.
That's my warm-up.
Just go out the door. Yeah. Just go out the door and start moving, and then just go into it.
And then today we were doing, like, the band walks and the, man.
It's the little stuff like that.
I know.
It's the little stuff like that where you think, because you got the big muscles and you got the big muscle groups and the stuff you get used to, but then you put these little bands on around your ankles and your glutes are on fire and you want to rip it in half and tell coach to never do it again.
You learned that from Conor probably, right?
I did. Absolutely. I learned it from him. He's great at warming up and working out.
No, we're, I mean, is that the most talked about fight that still hasn't happened? Probably, well, maybe Ferguson could be, a lot of people wanted that fight, but this one has to be like right there.
Well, for sure. And the hard part about it too, for me, is obviously as an athlete, you always have a fight. If either you don't have a fight scheduled and you're just kind of out there doing updates, hey, life is good, hanging with the family or working on this business venture. But this one has been so long. It got announced that me versus Conor for the Ultimate Fighter back in February of last year, or February of this year. And then now we're still not going to fight now until 2024. So it's been this one fight. And I've really held off on doing a lot of interviews because what am I going to do? Go on Ariel Helwani or go on one of these other shows and be like, well, still don't have a fight date, still don't have it confirmed. I mean, obviously there's a lot of speculation that it's going to happen, we're announced all the way up till March, and I'm hoping that I'm the announcement April,
I know.
We'll see whenever that is. So it's been a long time coming, but it's given me an opportunity to, the best year of my life, spending time with my family, working on myself, getting ready for what is to come. Because sometimes you need that season of preparation leading up to the greatest moment of opportunity. And that's really what this is going to be.
Yeah. But you probably would have preferred it sooner, right?
I mean, yeah. The original plan was like, get done with the fight or get done with the show. And in August was when it was going to be. And then we could fight, September, October, November around this time. But here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I know it all sounds good. Hey, spending time with the family, doing all this, that, but you're a fighter.
Yeah.
And you want to get in the octagon and put on a show. And plus, Conor obviously is a big event. I mean, you're a showman. It's prize fighting. Yeah. So it's like to show what you can do against one of the biggest names in combat sports is like, I don't know how long waiting this long must be tough.
Yeah, it is. It's been, and I'd be lying if I said there wasn't moments where like, man, this is where you want to pick up the phone and call Dana and call Hunter, but they're going to give you the same exact answer. Hey, we already told you, we're looking like this timeline. It's not public yet necessarily, but that's what they've been, and as we talked about too, I mean, I am one of the big stars, one of the guys who will put butts in seats, one of the guys who can be on these big pay-per-views. They're not going to hold me out if this fight isn't happening. So the fight is happening. I've had that assurance that it's going to happen and the confident expectancy that it's going to happen. But yeah, like you said, it's hard to train, even like guys like us, like obviously it's hard. It's still hard for me to train when there's not an exact date yet, even though there is an opponent. Timeline, I find myself, hey, I'm going to just work out because I need to work out because I want to stay young. I want to stay in shape. I want to stay dangerous. But it'd be nice to have that fight date. But I have been focused on working on a lot of business stuff outside the cage and just trying to be a father, trying to be a husband, trying to find deeper roots and deeper layers of myself during this time because, give a man that fight date and give him that thing to strive for. He can be laser focused, but take him away from that, to not have something to really focus on. And then you kind of start to see little chinks in your armor. I've started to see versions of myself or thinking of myself when I'm not having that bullseye to aim for, that date to aim for.
Yeah.
That I say, okay, I need to take stock in this and really work on these different layers of myself.
It's probably useful too, because I mean, you're not going to fight forever. So this could be a little intro into when you're done fighting, retirement type life of how are you going to stay busy?
Yeah.
You know, of course you're going to work out, but yeah, I mean, it's probably a good test run for that also. I was wondering though, how hard is it? Because every time I see Conor's name, he's always talking about fighting somebody else. And it's like, oh, he wants to fight Poirier. He wants to fight, I don't even know, probably Gaethje, probably go up to 185.
Adesanya,
Yeah.
he calls them all out.
I mean, yeah, it's Islam.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? You're not fighting anybody. And now you say you want to fight 10 other guys.
Yeah.
Plus he needs to fight you. It's like, what is he doing?
Yeah, well, honestly, and Dana came out on a press conference and says he likes to F with everybody.
Yeah.
You know, especially his opponent. The number one person that he wants to mess with is me. So if he knows he's fighting me next, of course he doesn't want to talk about me. He wants to talk about everyone else to get me antsy to pick up the phone and say, hey, Hunter, he's talking about Gaethje. Hey, hey, Dana, he's just calling about Islam. That's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
He wants me over here. Same thing. They're all in on it.
Yeah.
Coach Kavanaugh's in on it.
Yeah.
You know, now they're talking about timeline. They're talking about July and all these different things. And
Yeah.
Is it true or is it not true? Because they know that the waters can get muddy, the communication can get sideways, or the communication can be the lack thereof can kind of make you go a little bit crazy. And I've said this too. I mean, I think there's some other fights that Conor would rather take than me, because I'm a tough fight.
Yeah.
The guy that he has to come back, his road back to the UFC goes through one guy, and that's me. So if he waits me out long enough, maybe I do get antsy and I'm like, forget this, I'm going to fight one of the other top 5 guys and go toward that title. But I've made my decision. I'm sticking to that. The fight that I want is Conor. And the fight that, he needs to come back and take is me, but they're all in on it. He wants to throw people off the scent as much as possible.
I would, if I was you too, I would like have that chip on your shoulder. Everybody's against me, because it's like, that's how we operate better at that, right? Everybody's screwing with me. Fuck them all. We're gonna whatever. But I do think seriously, Conor would much rather fight somebody else.
Yeah.
And he's actually shown his hand a little bit, talking about, I know I've seen where he said UFC doesn't help anybody on a comeback, like from injury. They give, like, it'd be better to have a lower ranked opponent to get back into it. He said something like that too. So I know he's looking at you going, God, I got to fight this freaking guy coming right back from 2 years off. And he'll talk about his titanium shin bone and all this, but maybe a kick to that bends that shin bone, and then what?
Yeah, then it's going to be one kick to that would probably be very painful. It could be very painful for me as well, because obviously he's got the titanium in there. But man, I mean, I'm sure he's out there. I do see him training. We kind of talked about this. He's out there. He's training, or at least he's posting the stuff that he's training. So it's good to see him. It's good to see him kind of back in the gym and not just in the places that are not good for the career.
No, he looked terrible for a while. Terrible. I mean, it was just like, it was almost disappointing. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the sport for sure. I'm like the ultimate fan. And to see him all puffy and drinking, it's just like, felt like as a fan such a waste, to look at that. So he does look more in shape for sure, and he's training, and I want to see you guys fight.
Yeah, well, and then getting back in the USADA testing pool, obviously him. That was the big step. I mean, you can't say, the UFC is keeping me from my livelihood, or I want to fight, I want to be active, blah, blah, blah. But there's a prerequisite called getting back into the USADA testing pool. Unless you do that, you haven't done step 1 to then have the merit to say, okay, now they're holding me out, So now once he did that, and that was last month, back in October. So now he's been in the USADA testing pool. So obviously his comeback is imminent.
Yeah.
He's back in the testing
timeline.
pool. There's a timeline. So that was good to see. But yeah, I mean, I think going back to kind of fighting someone else, it's like he agreed to this thing with me, and then that attaches us to the next fight. And maybe at one point he thought, man, maybe I don't want to fight this guy anymore, you know? And I don't like to say that kind of stuff because I don't think at all Conor's afraid of me. I think Conor stepped up against Khabib, who was the most unbeatable guy in the entire world back then. He likes the big fights. He wants the big fights. He wants to test himself. But yeah, it's the age-old conundrum of, you know, give a man some silk sheets to sleep in and all the money and the Lamborghini yachts, and the timeline might look a little bit different than the guy who's really scraping and clawing for that next paycheck. So
yeah, I think so too. And, you know, so it's all storyline also, but if for some reason it didn't happen, imagine the storyline you could have, like, Conor ducked me.
Yeah.
He's so afraid of me. So then whatever, you could still use it to your advantage.
Yeah, I'll still use it to my advantage. Well, because then at that point you think, okay, well, you know, we are prize fighters and we want the biggest fight possible, but you also just general thoughts of being a human being and be a man of your word, do what you say you're going to do. And this is what we said we were going to do. And if you want to change courses, that shows a lack of, you know, integrity to move forward with what we want to do. So then I'd spin it as, okay, I'm going to go fight a real fighter. I'm going to call someone out who's in the top 5, or someone who needs to come back in the UFC, or someone who's got a huge name and get toward that title. Yeah.
It's we could use it for a positive for sure in any way. What would you see if, you know, when it does happen? It'd be sweet UFC 300. I know I've heard you say you go out there first round, put it on them, break them a little bit, then knock them out in the second, right? So I mean, how I see him, he likes to, you know, the best Conor was light on his feet, but he had that front leg out like a karate stance. And then he, you know, he's got that leg beat up a little bit the last few fights. So do you think that changes, or do you think that's just who he is?
Well, that's the thing. And this is what because obviously I see, you know, we see this stuff on social media all the time. It's just like us shining off. It's a bunch of people with a bunch of opinions. Well, you can't, you know, I know I haven't been as active as I normally have. I have fought 2 to 3 times a year my entire career. Now I'm going to go a year and a half without fighting. But he's 3 years off, gained a lot of weight, put on a lot of muscle, got heavier. Hopefully this fight's at 170, I believe. But so is Conor going to be able to move? I mean, not just the fact that he had the injury, but this time off. Is he going to have that karate stance? And a lot of times he starts off with that kind of bouncy, light on his feet karate stance, and then he starts to get his feet in the mud a little bit, slow down. Still a good fast counter puncher, but not as dynamic as he was back at 145 when he was fighting Chad Mendez and fighting Jose Aldo, some of his greatest fights. Plus, the greatest performance he ever put on, in my opinion, was in November against Eddie Alvarez when he became the double champ. That in and out, working the distance between the two, getting Eddie to overextend. I'm sure he sees shades of that. He sees shades of Chad Mendez with me. But I just don't think he's going to have that. He's not going to have... Back then, he was training nonstop toward a goal, and then he's taking these couple of years off. So what's his style going to be? Is it going to be less bouncy and less karate, more kind of plodding forward? We're going to be ready for anything. We know he's going to come out southpaw, most likely. Definitely now, because now his compromised leg, he would want to be his back leg, which would put him in a southpaw stance. But yeah, I mean, typical me fashion, getting his face right away, not spend too much time in that distance, because that's where he's really strong. He's really good with that distance, or at least he was, right? But I want to expect the best counter striker that we've seen, because he still has that, hopefully. Yeah,
you know, you talked about it is a game of not even inches but centimeters, because I think I remember in that Eddie fight, was that the one where Eddie threw a punch, and it's like he was so measured that it just barely hit his nose, and then he came back
with a 3-piece combo.
Bang, bang, so bang. If you lost you don't have to lose much for that one that skinned your nose to actually catch you. You know, so if you, because of training, because of heavier, because maybe your reaction's a little, because you've been off for 3 years, maybe that lands. And it doesn't take much. It's like a game of centimeters.
Especially with this
I know.
This one's a little bit more powerful than Eddie's. But you know, I mean, that's a thing. I mean, it's one of those deals where, you know, we throw ourselves into the fire and see how we come out the other side sometimes. And to me, it's always been my offense is my defense. And I know people say I'm hittable and I get hit too much and these things, of course, but you know, with a guy like Conor, where he wants to be in and out create that distance, bait you into something. I just want to get in his face, put my head in his chest, and hit him to the body, hit him to the head, and put him in a real fight. I mean, he hasn't been in a fight, and he will not have been in a fight in 3 years. And he was in the driver's seat a lot of that Dustin fight. He's not going to be able to be in the driver's seat with me, you know. And this is going to be 3 years off, so it's going to be a fun one, and it's going to be a huge card. And just ready for the dang thing to be announced. But
I know. And you know, a star like him, you can't believe your own hype pretty much. But once you get hit or get a body kick, or it's like all of a sudden there's probably some doubts pretty quick, I would think. Even for the most mentally strong guys, I could imagine, like, it doesn't take much to be reminded as like, oh my God, I'm doing this shit again.
Here we are.
I know.
Here we are. It was all fun and games, and then now we're like, okay, now we're in a fight. You know, and that's where I've always wanted to bring people also, you know, because you can talk about the punches and the kicks and the knees, the elbows, and all the strikes and all of the different techniques. These are all techniques, and these are parts of game plans. But being in someone's face, putting them into the fire, making them question themselves inside of the fight. That's part of the technique. That's part of my strategy. That's part of a strategy. You know, and a guy like Conor, people have questioned his love for the sport or his willingness to engage or come back. Maybe it's just me because I know I'm fighting him. I want to think that Conor is fueled more by the doubters and the doubts of everybody, that he's going to come and show up at the best version of himself. And I'm ready for that. I'm excited for that. That's what I've been looking forward to. That's what I've been visualizing. That's why I've been training so hard. Yeah, man, it's going to be one of those fights where one of those fights where Joe's there and he's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening. Right. Yeah. You know, and I think both of us are going to be that. I'm going to be that. Yeah, Conor's going to be that because there's probably moments too where he's laying there with a broken leg thinking, man, I might not ever get to feel that rush again. And now he's going to get to do it. And it just so happens he's going to run into a buzzsaw named Michael Chandler.
Well, you know, and you mentioned that people like to criticize you. Like I've seen them say, you know, fight IQ or you get too wild or whatever. But then I look at this, like this right here.
Yeah.
You didn't really plan that, did you?
No.
I mean, so yeah, part of your, I don't know, part of your superpower basically is on the fly, you're a fighter.
Yeah.
And you just instinctually make decisions, and it landed like knockout of the, maybe not of the year that year, but it's like one of the most iconic knockouts over a legend. And that's just like, that happens too. Yeah. So you can't just say like, oh, look, if you would have done this, because then you wouldn't have this. Yeah. If you're all just measured and exactly calculated and following this game plan, it's still a fight and you still are creating.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're out there.
You're a martial artist.
Yeah. Yeah. You're a martial artist making split-second decisions in the fight, right? And it's so easy for people on the outside to criticize, and it's so easy, you know. It's so easy, and you've probably done it 1,000 times on hunts. If I would have, maybe if we would have went this way a little bit more, maybe if we would have thought about the wind more, or this, right? There's always the hindsight, but I think that's the beautiful thing about life, and it's a beautiful thing about doing something where the deck is stacked against you, or the likelihood of losing, the likelihood of failure is so high because you're doing what 99% of people are so afraid to do. Yeah. And that's why people are drawn to what you do. That's why people are drawn to mixed martial arts. That's why, and Dana and these guys have built a phenomenal business. But just inherently with what mixed martial arts is, they were able to just spread it out to the world, something that people love so dang much, because it doesn't matter if you're 1,000-to-1 underdog or 1,000-to-1 favorite. You can get knocked out at any given moment. You can get kicked in the liver and your whole body, you know, paralyzes and you can't move for 10 seconds and then you get finished. It's you're throwing yourself into the fire. You're being tied onto a tornado, and in the moment you're just trying to make decisions. You know?
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy.
Can't imagine. I mean, I love watching it, but you're right. Everybody fears getting in a fight. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's like one of the greatest fears people have, and you do it for a living in front of the world. It's, but yeah, people are definitely attracted to it, like moth to a flame for sure. So Tony, he's fighting on this next card coming up. How do you think that fight goes, that Paddy Pimblett?
Man, I think Paddy is one of those guys where he got the Conor treatment a little bit to where he's phenomenal on the microphone. He's got a cool look. He loves what he's doing. He's smiling. He's dancing. He's got an entire, his fellow countrymen there in Liverpool, I believe he's from, or somewhere over there.
Scouser.
Scouser, yeah.
I don't know what that is.
Whatever. So we know he's a Scouser.
Scousers don't get knocked out.
Yeah, right?
Even though he almost did.
Yeah, I know, right? So he's got this look, and I think he's, and he's been, but he's got unwavering confidence, right? Mm-hmm. But he also has talked about struggling with self-doubt and struggling with even a little bit of depression while he was off and being in this while he was injured and that kind of stuff. So he's done a really good job of humanizing himself, but then also being like, showing that, hey, I'm a larger than life figure as well. And the UFC has done a good job of pushing that. Skill wise, I think Paddy is pretty dang good and solid, but he's a guy like Tony. The one thing about Tony is he is a scary fight. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if he's still fighting 5 years from now, he's still going to be a scary fight. He was the scariest fight, 5 years ago, whenever he was on that big run where he didn't lose for 12 fights or whatnot. Yeah. And then even being in there against Tony, you're fighting a legend. He can't be stopped unless you separate him from consciousness or catch him. He's had his arm broken inside there, and he
won't tap.
No, won't tap. He's a freaking, and he's awkward, right? And he's the type of guy who would go through Hell Week with David Goggins last week. Right?
I saw that.
Right? It's like he's that kind of guy. He's got a screw loose, and that's
does.
and I don't say that to
No, you need that.
To talk down to him or about him. It's a freaking scary fight. So honestly, if I had to put money on it, which obviously I don't, and we can't. I'm going to go and say that. I shouldn't say that. You can. But like
if I was going to put money on it.
Yeah, right. I mean, Tony's a scary fight for anybody, and Paddy coming back from kind of the injury, it's a tough fight for Paddy for sure. It's a level up. If Paddy gets through Tony, he gets put to a different realm. But man, I think it's hard to bet against Tony.
That's what I was saying.
In that fight.
Because, Paddy gets hit. Mm-hmm. He's like, some people think he lost that was Jared Gordon, right?
Jared Gordon, yeah.
Yeah, some people think he lost that fight, which I wouldn't have been shocked if they would have given the decision to Gordon. So, yeah, I don't think he's fought like any high-ranked opponents, really.
No, this is a huge step up.
A big step up. Tony, man, even in your fight, I mean, he landed a couple shots on you.
Because he's so awkward, and when he throws punches from these weird angles, whether it's straight or it comes out here and it comes down straight.
Because he's wide too, so those punches come at a wide angle.
Very
probably
weird. Yeah, and his feet are doing weird stuff. What I said was he's a tough puzzle to solve because you can't really, even Conor Poirier is a very, very good fighter, but he is very basic. He's brilliant with the basics, which you can bring in guys or have guys in your training camp. You're like, hey, you're not that far off from Dustin. Mm-hmm. Dustin's a much better fighter than you, and I think he's a world class. But you can be a southpaw who's kind of basic but brilliant with the basics. Mm-hmm. Tony, you don't know what he could be fighting you from his hands. He might be walking around on his hands in the middle
of forward roll,
a forward roll, and like these and these things where people might throw a joke out here and there. We're like, oh, he tried to throw sand in his face or this, but like, it's a scary place to be because we like predictability as human beings, right? Yeah. And we have pushed ourselves enough in our training and putting ourselves out there and failing enough or getting outside of our comfort zone where we're a little bit more okay with unpredictability than most people. But still, I still like predictable. I'd much rather fight a Poirier who's probably a better fighter than Tony, because he's more predictable. Right. Because Tony in there, you're like, dude, I don't want to get hit with some weird spinning upward front flip elbow in front, and it's embarrassing. It's scary. It's coming from weird angles.
Oh yeah, he that spinning elbow he does.
Dude. It's and then I take him down, I blast him across the cage, and then he's got these bony elbows, long arms. He's really good at throwing elbows. So if Patty gets the takedown, Tony's going to do some damage from the bottom. If Tony gets the takedown, he's got phenomenal jiu-jitsu. On the feet, he's very, very awkward, but still a very good and effective striker. And Patty hasn't seen, nobody has seen anything like Tony. You fight Tony, it's a one of one.
Yeah.
So it's a scary
thing. What did he
thing.
land against you?
It was just a jab, and I ran into the jab, and it was a hard freaking jab.
I bet
it was the one that blew up my my right eye.
A left jab or right?
Well, and that was the thing too. He switches stances and does these weird things. I think he actually had switched stance and threw just a hard javelin, straight, long, those really, really long arms, and just boom, right in the eyeball. And I was coming forward too, which, it's definitely, my face has taken some damage at my own expense sometimes too, because it wasn't just them throwing it. I was actually coming in and running into something too, but that's what we signed up for. So it's a scary fight. I mean, I think I would give the edge to Tony in that one just by sheer unpredictability. Cardio for days. I know Patty's usually got pretty darn good cardio, but not like Tony. Tony's got that cardio where it's like I don't get tired. I know I feel tired a little bit, but I don't get tired type of guy.
And he's definitely not going to be intimidated. No. Tony won't by the moment. Yeah. No. I mean, he's going to be talking his crazy stuff during the press conference with his glasses on. I love it. I mean, El Kukue, how could you not? I've watched so many of his highlights. Even his 911 call.
Oh, my God.
I love where his wife is saying, don't send whatever because you're going to get hurt. It's just like, that's just a good example of this guy, you don't know what you're going to get.
No, man.
I've been a fan of his forever.
Well, me too. And that was and that's what I love too about this sport is we can sit here and I'm a fan of all the different guys that I have fought in different respects, because I mean, how do you not respect what these guys have done? I mean, my run in the UFC has been pretty darn up there. Every single guy I've fought has been inside the top 5. So they're all living legends of the guys that I've fought. And I can separate the fact that I need to fight you and I need to, win from, man, I really like what you do, or maybe I like how you operate, or I like a lot of things about Justin Gaethje. I feel like I always said me and Gaethje would be pretty darn good friends, I think, if we didn't have to fight each other, like we could be friends, right? Maybe he disagrees. Poirier and I don't know, not so much. Me and Tony are cool,
Yeah. No, it's
weird.
I don't know. You guys are all legend. To fans, it's like you're all larger than life. I mean, it's so fun. I don't know if it's fun. It's so exciting. It's like watching gladiators. It's so, and especially to be there live. Luckily I'm friends with Joe, so I get like, he's got the best seat in the house. I got the second best seat.
Yeah, and you get to see a lot of the fights live, and then also get to spend time around the guys too, because that's one thing if you're a fan and you just watch the fights on TV, or you've been to a couple fights but you've never interacted with with it's one thing to get to work out with the guys and spend time with the guys and maybe even hunt with the guys or whatever, where it's cool where you can just separate, okay, this guy's not just a guy who throws punches and kicks in a cage.
Yeah.
I know. Some guys are normal, some guys are a little bit not so normal, but we're all human.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how you can be. It's weird how nice. I mean, a lot of the fighters are just so nice, just like you, and just like, but can flip that switch whenever. It's pretty incredible.
Well, I think, and that was always the misconception, right? I go from wrestling, which people would think, oh, these, those guys are more tame than fighters. But I think the reason so many fighters are pretty darn nice guys is we already have that outlet.
Yeah, you don't have to prove, and you don't have to prove anything.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I always say too. I mean, the age-old question of, hey man, if you're at a bar, or you're at a restaurant, or you having some drinks or whatever, like people try to fight you, and I'm like, no, probably not any more than you. Probably not any more than people try to fight you.
Yeah.
But we also, man, I don't need to fight in this different. I don't turn negotiations into a fight. I don't turn this conversation into a fight. I don't turn these things into a fight, because I already got this fight thing that I have to do all the time, which I'm actually not a very confrontational person. I don't enjoy confrontation. I do not enjoy people not liking me or me not being in sync with somebody, if you will. But when it comes to fighting, man, I want to rip somebody's head off. And then for that 15 minutes, I'm a different guy. For that 25 minutes, I'm a different guy. And then I can just shut it off and come back to being a normal person.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. I followed your journey all the way from Missouri to Bellator to here. And I was curious about this because this got a little play lately. Dagestani wrestling versus U.S. wrestling. Mm-hmm. Is there a difference? And what do you think about that? As we all know, I've been putting all my guests through a pretty good cardio session on Mount Pisgah. Go Ruck is a welcome new addition to the podcast and Lift, Run, Shoot series. I love the 80-pound sandbags, but I'm not sure how my guests feel about it. But what do they say? Pain is weakness leaving the body. All the people at Go Ruck are beasts, and I'm thrilled to partner with them. We use the rucks and sandbags on almost every episode, and now you can take your training to the next level as they are offering listeners 10% off when you use code CAM, C-A-M, at goruck.com. See you guys on the mountain. You better not forget that weight.
Man, so I mean, obviously Dagestani wrestling or like the Russian Sambo stuff, it's all kind of similar. It's all, that would all be international type of wrestling. And then we have our collegiate wrestling that we do here, which is a little bit different, more focused on top control. Because you can get riding time in college wrestling, you can turn guys. So I think good old fashioned, passionate American wrestling wins all the time.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Obviously I'm very biased. But I like the idea of it's the takedown to the top control, whereas, more that international wrestling is takedown and a guy just goes into what we call parterre, where he's on the ground. He's just trying not to get turned. Mm-hmm. Whereas in fighting, you can't just try not to get turned. You have to actually get hand control and try to get out. Mm-hmm. That's why so many Division I wrestlers or college wrestlers have done so well. That top control, always putting the weight on the hands, stuffing a guy's head in the mat. Weight behind his hips to get all the weight on his hands. But yeah, with that being said, that's why I know I haven't done myself any favors by losing some of these fights, and I would love to fight Islam. I don't think I deserve to fight Islam right now. I need to string some wins together, or at least this next win, because that's what I'm focused on. But man, a lot of people want to see that fight because I do think I stopped Islam's takedowns. I do think I can take him down. I do think I'm a better striker than him. I do like the fact that he's a southpaw, and I've done very well against southpaws. So
that's a good matchup.
Yeah, it's a good matchup, and I mean, the good thing about the lightweight division is no matter what, you got probably Oliveira and Islam fighting next. It sounds like, and then Gaethje is either going to defend the BMF belt against somebody, or Gaethje will be the next in line for the title. Which I think Gaethje wins the title. I'd like to see Gaethje win the title. And then obviously you got Poirier in there. We're not quite sure what he's doing, but the guys at the top, that top 1, 2, and 3, Gaethje, Oliveira, and Islam. I have some history obviously with Gaethje and Oliveira, and then people want to see me fight Islam. So it's going to be a fun little next 12 months when I knock Conor out, and then we see what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, you four up there, God, so good. And any night, it seems like the fight can go anyway. I mean, just so close on Oliveira, and then the fight of the year with Gaethje, and then I do like Islam. It's crazy. He wins, but he doesn't have that larger than life type where everybody's like, no doubt, like Khabib had that mystique, but he is winning. Yeah. And he keeps winning, but it's like, I don't know, people are making excuses for his wins, it seems like, or the fans are. I don't know, he hasn't got over the top for whatever reason. Yeah,
and I don't know if it was because one thing, Khabib was good on the microphone. Like Khabib would kind of speak his broken language and or his kind of broken English and make little jokes here and there, kind of call out people. He was very direct, and people loved that. I think that really helped Khabib out. Islam doesn't have that as much.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been as dominant for sure. I mean, the way Khabib mauled people when he was on top of them, and he never got tired, and he would just beat the crap out of them, even though it wasn't exactly what people wanted to see all the time on the ground, because it was a ground fight. They wanted to see two guys slug it out. That's what the general public wants to watch. The way Khabib just mauled people was different than Islam. But then, obviously his last fight knocked out Alexander Volkanovski, but that was on 2 weeks' notice.
Yeah.
So there always is this little bit.
I know.
There's always this little thing that we're like, yeah, but he just came off the couch 2 weeks ago, and he's a 145 pounder, and then some of these other fights, he just hasn't been as dominant as
his first Volkanovski. People thought Volkanovski won.
Yeah, so there's that too, and
Khabib never had a close fight. It didn't seem like.
No, I don't think he ever lost a round. Besides, there was
Conor.
one fight. Oh yeah.
I think was it Michael Johnson maybe landed something.
Michael Johnson hurt him.
Yeah, maybe that. But then Conor, I think, won the third or fourth, maybe, or I don't know what, but a round.
Yeah.
Other than that, but there was no split decision win or anything. It was.
Yeah. Yeah, and what was it? In Islam, the problem too is if there was no Khabib, Islam would probably have a lot more. He would probably have a lot more or respect or look more dominant.
Yeah.
But everybody compares him to Khabib,
right.
which is unfair for him.
Yeah.
It's really unfair, that he's been so, because that's what it was. It's like the next Khabib. But he's like, well, if I was him, I'd be like, well, I just want to be the first Islam, not the next Khabib, right? But unfortunately for him, the court of public opinion is, well, he's Khabib's underling, Khabib's brother, Khabib's main guy, and he's not as good as Khabib. But it's like, well, but he's pretty dang good.
I think he lost once too, didn't he?
Yeah, he got knocked out by, I forget who it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a drug test failure back in the day. So that's tough.
Yeah. So the reason why that Dagestani wrestling versus U.S. came up is because of Bo Nickal. I think he brought it up, actually, that maybe talking about. But he's coming on the podcast, I think. Isn't Bo Nickal coming on pretty soon? In December, yeah.
Nice.
So that'll how good do you think he is?
I think he's very good.
Yeah.
I think Bo is very good. And he's just like anybody. He's still very green.
Yeah.
I mean, for the dominance that he has shown, got a knockout in his last fight, I believe.
I think so.
Is he fighting? Does he have his fight scheduled right now?
I don't think so.
No, he doesn't.
No, not that I know of.
But no, very promising guy. I mean, and honestly, the way that he wrestled, he was a little bit more funky kind of in college. So that doesn't always translate really well to MMA. But the way he has dominated on the ground, he's going to be able to take guys down at will. But also, he's starting to get more and more confidence in his hands. And the reason wrestlers are dominant isn't because they can pick you up and put you down. It isn't because of the strength or the physical attributes. It's the fact that the dude went through 5 years of the hardest training camp he will ever have in his entire life. Anything I've done in mixed martial arts is easier than those
College
5 years I
wrestling.
spent at Mizzou, right? So his mind is built up. He's got an unwavering belief in himself. The dude coming in right off the Contender Series and start talking about Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, him and I have had a couple conversations of like, hey, dude, well, earn it a little bit, a little bit more before you start sounding like people think you're crazy. Even though I honestly think I would love to see him and Khamzat fight tomorrow because it would be a very interesting fight. I think Khamzat's got a little bit more tools because he's been fighting for longer. But man, I think Bo's going to be Bo will be a champion in the UFC.
So.
It's going to take a couple years, and I think do it right. I think Paddy Pimblett did it right. I think Sean O'Malley did it right. These guys who could have been pushed into that top 5 right away very quickly. But man, it's a long career. You want to be at your peak and at your most amount of earning income, your biggest platform possible when you're seasoned enough to hit that prime of your career. You don't want to take you don't want to take too hard of fights right away. And that sounds a little bit counterintuitive because you're like, well, we're fighters, we're supposed to be tough, but it's a long career.
Yeah.
Right? You want this career. I've been fighting for 15 years. I could have very easily been one of those guys that fizzled out years and years before and not gotten to this point to where now I can say I'm going to set myself up for a very long time because of the right decisions.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine in your 5th fight if you would fight Poirier or Gaethje or Oliveira?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't have been good probably.
No.
I mean, exactly. I don't know how good you were compared to now.
I promise I would have lost. A lot worse than I lost now. It's
just not. It takes time.
It
just like anything.
Well, and that's the thing too is we're as wrestlers, we're very well versed in hand-to-hand combat,
Mm-hmm.
but the wrestling arena, the wrestling match is just different than being locked into a cage, and the rounds are longer, and you need to get hit, and getting hit in sparring isn't the same as getting hit in a fight where everything is on the line and everybody is watching.
Right.
But Bo has done a really good job with the pressure thus far. I mean, he's been a guy who came off the Contender Series and then went straight to, I think, a main card pay-per-view, and then now he's a main card pay-per-view guy on these big pay-per-views. That's a lot of pressure that a lot of people would not be able to handle in his first 5 fights or so. So he's got the mindset, the heart set. He's training really well. He's got a great relationship with his team at ATT. So he's got everything he needs. He just needs that time, you know?
Yeah, I think it's he's been on such a good roll and dominating, but it's always a big test the first time you get caught, you know, and get hurt. Because I always think back to Hazmat against Burns.
Yep.
You know, that was turned into a war.
Yeah, it did.
And nobody expected that because he'd just dominated everybody. Then he's in a war, and it's like that tells you a lot about a fighter.
Yep.
Is how they respond to that.
Yeah, and for a guy like Bo, who his striking is getting better, but there's nothing worse for a wrestler than shooting a takedown and missing it, getting stuffed. Right, pushing a guy up against the cage, the takedown, get stuffed. How do you respond to the thing that always works for you not working? How do you respond to you know? So all of that will be. You know, I'm sure he's training very hard in the training room, but it's different once you get into a fight. And that's the thing, that we train so dang hard and so long and so disciplined and do everything for this one night. And this one night isn't even a full night. It's 15 minutes and it's 3 different rounds. It's 3 little rounds that you get to showcase everything. And hopefully that you perform where you need to in this little bitty time period, you know? And that's why fighting is so hard to stay undefeated. You know, you're going to have an off night. You're going to get caught. You're gonna be going through tough scenarios, tough rounds. How do you bounce back from a bad round? You know, but all signs point toward Bo being one of those guys who can hang in the top very, very soon, in my opinion.
How hard is it? I was thinking about 2 different scenarios. Well, as a wrestler, you want to shoot in, but how much do you worry about getting caught by a knee? And how your opponent? How much are they kind of banking on, can I catch him with a knee when he comes in? Is that like a big thing?
It is a big thing, and it's a dangerous thing for a guy to be. If you're the wrestler and I'm want to catch you with the knee, if I'm throwing that knee up and I don't land it, I've put myself on one foot, weight on my heels, and I'm going to get taken down if I don't catch him with the knee. And then for a wrestler, that's why in wrestling, I mean, sweep single was my favorite shot. I mean, you're not going to see me hitting a sweep single in fighting because A, we're standing up, and then B, I don't want to be shooting below the knee. I want to be shooting above the knee. So you see a lot of guys. Kamaru Usman does a really good job of snatching that front leg, head inside, get your head in their chest, grab the leg above the knee, focus more and attack the hips more than the actual like knee and below. That is definitely one thing that helps you keep your forward trajectory more into his chest instead of down. You know, because wrestling, we were able to kind of shoot down a little bit, and you're not worried about getting hit with a knee and you catch a leg and then turn it into a scramble. Yeah. But it's 90% of your takedowns that you see in fighting are going to be a guy putting his head into your chest, attacking the hips. Because if you can control the hips, you can control the body. Gotcha. And having your head up, where the head goes, the body goes, is kind of a general rule too. If I have my head down, you stuff the head goes down to the mat. I'm not going to be able to take anybody down with my head on the mat. Yeah. And then one of the biggest eye-opening experiences was realizing, I always thought, well, if I can take a guy down without a wall, without a cage, it's going to be a lot easier to take him down against the cage when I can use the cage. But what I realized was there could be a guy with very mediocre takedown defense, and he can use the cage to his defense, for his defense, and it was a lot harder to take guys down off the cage than I thought it was. That was one of the big frustration points for me when I first started fighting. That's why if you can just blast a guy without getting the cage, or if you get him to the cage, use the momentum of bouncing into the cage and then off the cage, lift him high. Randy Couture did a really good job of that. That high single. And I try to do that too. If I can just bounce a guy off the cage, get my hands locked, always try to get your hands locked, attack the hips, and then lift them, because you can use that cage bounce, because that cage has got that 3-4 inches of little spring on it.
Yeah, then I was also wondering how often in a fight, you know, you have to be so dialed in and locked in. Do you ever lose focus and just be like, what was I doing? You know, and it's just like, I don't know, just kind of get like caught in the headlights a little bit.
Yeah, well, that, and also too, you'd be surprised, you know, because obviously you try to ignore everything and you just focus on the one guy who's trying to take your head off. That's probably the most important thing to focus on. But you'd be very surprised how every now and then, you know, you can kind of like see somebody out of the corner of your eye in there, and you're like, all right, back, focus again, right? Or, you know, the best is when you can take a guy down and then you're on top, because what I have really tried to do is find moments of rest inside of a fight, because I'll just go till I redline and pass out. You know, that's kind of that's how I'm wired.
Right.
So I have to, you know, one of the biggest things that I talk to my coaches about right before I'm going out there, even as we're walking out, hey, tell me to keep my hands up and tell me to breathe. Keep my hands up and breathe. Those are the two things that I need the cues, because if not, I'm like, I'll put my hands down by my waist. I'll hold my breath and I'll try to kill you. You know, so I gotta find these moments of rest, you know, after, you know, took a nice big shiner from Tony, blasted him across the cage, get on top, and then have a moment of rest. Take nice 3 big deep breaths. You know, I'm not going to sit there and stall. You know, I keep the action going, but I want to find these moments where I can push a guy up against the cage, take a couple of breaths. Because if I don't, I'll just start mouth breathing, and then heart rate explodes, and then it makes it very, very tough to be doing your game plan. But there are those moments where, and it's almost kind of because it's an out of body experience sometimes too, where you're in there, you're thinking, or you're not thinking, or you're back in you're sitting on the stool. Either it was a good round, it was a bad round, you know, because that's where the dichotomy of, oh shoot, I just got freaking smashed in that round. Okay, I got to come back. Or you're like, okay, I can't wait for this whistle to blow again so I can get out there and hopefully finish this fight ASAP. So it's there's so much more going on inside of the cage than most people think when you're just an onlooker. But there's definitely been those moments where you're like, oh, is that Dana? There's Dana. Oh, there's like, I wonder where my wife is sitting.
And like, I always think that it'd be good to get a takedown like right in front of the boss and beat the shit out of somebody there. And it's like, instead of like, oh, well, I'm on the other side of the cage, you know. But
well, I just saw. So speaking of Patty, the guy that he fought either last fight or the fight before, Jordan Levitt, he was fighting Matt Wyman, and I completely forgot about this, but he ended up shooting, getting Matt up against the cage on one end of the cage, picking him up, and you could hear his coach say, "Take him down, come over here," and then he goes, "Where are you at? Where are you at?" So his coach to say something, and then he walks toward the voice, his coaches, and then slams him and knocks him out because of the impact off the canvas. So there was stuff like that. There was Frank Trigg versus Matt Hughes, where he takes him all the way across the cage and takes him down in front, because nothing worse than you take a guy down in the other guy's corner, and his coaches are coaching him how to get out. And I'm like, I can't even hear my coaches, and I'm really just trying to, whatever you tell him to do, I'm going to try to stop him from doing what he's doing, right? You know.
Well, I was also curious about this. So I see the fighters, they go to their corner. Is like, are you actually listening to the coaching? And it's like, because they always say, okay, you got to, you know, 1, 2, I don't even know what. But are you just like, do you go back out there and just do whatever you want? Or are you trying to use those cues?
I usually do whatever I want. Unfortunately.
I figured.
No, but I think, you know, there's those, you want to be able to be there and hear your coach. For me, it's Henry Hooft is always inside the cage. Because normally, depending on the commission, they usually only let you have 1 or 2 corners in there, and you usually have 3 or 4 if it's a title fight or a main event. You can have one guy outside the cage, so he would be behind you, and you can hear his voice behind you, whether it be your grappling coach, and then you have your striking coach in front of you. But Henry's always kind of right there, and he knows what to say. A lot of times, it's very simple stuff. All of Henry's entire H kickboxing program is basically keeping it simple, being brilliant with the basics. So he doesn't overcoach, which is great. He's very even keel. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. He'll tell you You know, if you ask him, hey, did we win that round? He'll tell you yes or no, and he'll tell you the truth. You know, you lost that round, get your ass in gear, and you got to get back out there. But yeah, it's very simple stuff. And it's also, there's probably certain guys who can handle more than others. You know, for me, I don't want to be coached a ton. I'd rather just know that it's almost sometimes a reminder that, hey, we're in this thing together.
Yeah.
And I want to go out there and I want to beat that guy because I want to beat him. I want to beat him for my family and the fans and that kind of stuff, but I want to beat him for you as well.
Yeah.
There's that intrinsic emotional, spiritual connection that you have with your coach too.
Right.
Where it's 30 seconds of the 1 minute could be just, hey, breathe, or hey, stay calm, you're doing good. Like even just not even real cues, not even the X's and the O's of fighting, but because you're in a battle, and I'm sure there's times where he's looked at me and thought, okay, he's deer in the headlights, or he's psychopath trying to kill somebody, or he's very calm, and there's probably a different approach.
Yeah, each time.
Yeah. The way you would talk to me after the first round might be completely different the way you would talk to me after the second round going into the third, you know?
Yeah. It's yeah. And what do you tell yourself out there? I mean, do you talk to yourself, or I mean, I know everybody's got thoughts going on. I know when I'm on a hunt, sometimes I'm like, how have I ever killed before? I have no idea even. It's like, this is never going to work. Or you're like, I just need one chance I'm going to make it pay. But it's like, I'm the biggest doubter of myself, and also the biggest believer, it seems like, in a minute time.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, there's is that how fighting is too? I mean, is it a roller coaster?
Inside the fight, there's not a lot of talking going on inside of my brain. Not a lot of kind of self-talk, unless there's those moments of breathe, unless there's those moments of, you know, whether it be, hey, you deserve this. Yeah. You know, hey, you're better than this guy.
Right.
You know, something of that effect. The biggest thing for me is back in the locker room and making that walk. Because I've always talked about, you know, we are conditioned and programmed to think about worst case scenarios for protection, to protect ourselves, right? So we're always going to fall back into, well, the what if this happens, what if that happens, to be able to protect ourselves. So the biggest thing for me is speaking to myself audibly. So, because if I'm speaking, I can't hear any negativity.
Right.
So if I just sit here in my silence and I'm walking out there in silence, I'm most likely going to hear something negative. Holy cow, there's a lot of pressure. You acknowledge the pressure. Holy cow, this guy's good. Holy cow, this is the biggest next fight. This is the biggest moment of my life. Don't freaking screw this up, right? So if I can just speak and I can just not have any dead space in between thoughts or actually speaking audibly inside of my mind, or even verbally coming out of my mouth, that's where I can just keep saying my positive affirmations or speaking life into the reality that we're about to walk into, and ultimately it's puts me in the right headspace, you know. And then leading up to the fight, listening to my certain song or two that I listen to, thinking about my family, thinking about how truly blessed I am, getting myself, I know where I operate best is where I am welled up so much with emotion before a fight that tears come in my eyes and I'm start to cry a little bit. I'm like, that's when I'm my most dangerous, because I feel like I'm not just, it supersedes just me being a human or me being an athlete. It's something bigger than that. I am
your
part
purpose.
It's my purpose, and I'm part of I'm a piece of a bigger puzzle than I sometimes give myself credit for. And then speaking it into existence and speaking life over myself all the way until that bell rings and we have Bruce Buffer the fist bump and all that kind of stuff. And then it's like, okay, here we go. Yeah. And then get punched in the face, and then it really starts.
Well, I mean, it is hard to have perspective sometimes, but if you looked like from your days at Mizzou to like here in this beautiful house and the studio and the gym and the life you've created and your beautiful kids and your wife, it's just like, how could you not be grateful and be like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Look at this has been provided because I've followed my passion and believed in myself, and I've been blessed with this. It's just like, but yeah, we have a hard time having perspective all the time. Yeah. You know, it's just like you get caught up in the moment, and then it's just like, yeah, that self-talk comes in. But.
Yeah. Well, because you can look at it you can look at a problem, either, you know, something great that's happening or a problem that's happening. You can look at it under a microscope or with looking at it like it's right here in front of your face. But if you can sometimes just take a step back and look at it from that 30,000 foot view, and you just see, if you're able to just look at all of your life thus far and what you've accomplished, and even the things that were bad things that happened to you, but good things came from them. And that's why I always kind of say too, we just talked about it on the last podcast, talking about, I said, I don't care if I win or lose. I think wasn't exactly probably how I should have said it. It's almost I'm not concerned with the outcome because I know I've done what I needed to do. As long as I've done what I needed to do, the outcome is going to take care of itself. And no matter what, at the end of it, my God still loves me, my family still loves me, and I still love me. So ultimately, win, lose, good thing, bad thing, all we're doing is just trying to figure this thing out. And I know I've done everything possible to be successful. If I'm not successful that night, or if I don't get my hand raised, or I don't win, I'm not a loser.
Doesn't
I'm
define
just lost,
you.
right? Failure is an event, not a person. And I think we can put so much pressure on that thing, and we squeeze it so tight that this has to happen, when really maybe it wasn't supposed to happen. I always talk about losing a fight in Bellator was the greatest thing that could have happened to me, because had I not lost that fight, I still would have been the champion. If I was still the champion, I would have had the champion's clause. I would have had another year left on my contract. But by losing that fight, it was painful, and it sucked, and it was embarrassing, and it brought tears, and I didn't sleep that night, and I just felt like a failure for weeks. But it turned out to be the greatest thing that could have happened to me, because now here I am sitting here talking to you about fighting Conor, and then you look at the awards that I've accrued over the last couple of years. All of these would not have been possible had that bad thing happened. So once you have put yourself out there and failed enough, you realize that those failures are a prerequisite to the success. And also those failures are sometimes a blessing in disguise, even though it sounds so cliche.
It does, yeah.
And it's hard to admit that in the moment, because people can say, oh man, hey, something good's going to come from this. You're like, man, shut up, dude. I don't want to hear that right now.
Well, I think it's different too. If one failure and bouncing back and being greater is better than if you had 10 failures in a row, tougher to tell yourself that story.
True.
So you work your ass off to make sure that that's not like a reoccurring theme. But I totally get that. And it's like, I see all these, your awards from the UFC. I couldn't imagine you not in the UFC. Yeah. Even though you were the face of Bellator, and now that seems like almost a lifetime ago.
Man, and that was such a tough decision, man. And it actually, I don't know if it's public knowledge or I think it's being out there talked now, but Bellator is essentially, now they're not going to be on Showtime anymore. There's something going on with the PFL and Bellator. Bellator is either going away in a couple years, or PFL bought them, or I don't know exactly what's happening. But so to think about that, but then also think about, I can't even imagine myself not making that decision to go to the UFC. But it was a tough decision. I was leave the security that you have to take a leap of faith where I could have very well fallen flat on my face, but I was okay with that. I was okay with sitting in that meeting with Hunter Cambell, and I said, hey, I want the toughest guys right away. Either I am who I say I am, or I'm not. And I'm completely okay with me not being that. I'm okay with that. But what I'm not okay with is me not going to the UFC and me not fighting, not putting myself out there, because that what if would haunt me for the rest of my life. I would have sleepless nights the rest of my life, or it would take me a very long time and a lot of counseling and some other things where I would find success to have not gone down that journey. Walk, just like making the decision to walk on to the University of Missouri was the single greatest athletic decision I ever made, because if I didn't take that chance to possibly ride the bench for 5 years, never wear the singlet, never start, and then I ended up becoming an All-American, and then coming to, all those years in Bellator, and then kind of walking on, taking that chance on myself to go to the UFC. If you don't do that, you're a shell of the man that you're supposed to be. I would be a shell of the man that I was supposed to become, and I still got a lot of work left to do, but I sure am inching toward him every day. You bet on yourself a number of times now. And like if people could take that lesson, and it's not going to be, those are big decisions, and everybody's decisions, maybe it's not like from Bellator to UFC, but it's still big in their life. It's still, maybe it's changing a job, maybe it's taking a pay cut to maybe move forward, and it's big for them. But betting on yourself, it's there's a lot to that, because it's easy to say, but if you haven't put in the work, and it feels like it's a hand you're going to lose,
that's a tough decision. But when you've done the work, it's way easier to say, okay, this is going to work out in the end.
Yeah, well, and it's got to be the right time also.
Mm-hmm.
You know, similar to what we talked about Joe. So going on Joe's podcast, that happened because he was like, "Hey, man, you're gonna come to the UFC or not?" And I was like, "Hey, why don't you invite me on the podcast or whatever?" And that we talked about it. I ended up doing the podcast with Joe and then not signing with the UFC. I re-signed with Bellator. Didn't even test free agency. So at that time, it didn't feel right. The time before when I re-signed with Bellator, it didn't feel right. But this time, it did. In September of 2020, it felt right. It felt like that door wasn't just open. It wasn't just unlocked. It was wide open and ready for me to walk through. And I can't explain why it was. It was an internal feeling, knowing that it felt right. So to those people struggling with that decision, if it doesn't, you want to make that decision, maybe it's the right decision, but it's still the wrong time.
Right.
Maybe it needs to be a little bit longer, and don't act like if you don't make that decision now that decision's not going to be there a year from now, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, one more business deal from now, one more handshake from now, whatever it may be. Because, James 1:5, he who lacks wisdom, pray for it, and the Lord your God will give it abundantly, right? And just asking for wisdom. Like, I don't know what the right answer is right now. It doesn't feel like I have all the pieces of the puzzle. Just give me the wisdom. Give me the right person to come into my life. Give me the right conversation to have. Give me the right accolade to have, or even the failure to have, for me to gain more knowledge to then be able to make one more step. And sometimes inaction is the best action.
Yeah.
And sometimes inaction is the worst decision you can make. It's the conundrum of life.
It is.
It only worked out for me because I was patient. I was down in the valley for a very long time. I knew I didn't want to be in Bellator for a couple of years. I knew I had something bigger for me waiting on the other side, but I still made the right decision at the right time to re-sign with Bellator until it was absolutely perfect timing. And then coming to the UFC was the perfect timing with Khabib retiring, and it all worked out just ridiculous.
Yeah. No, it's been pretty amazing. But you mentioned Hunter Cambell. I love that guy.
The man, dude.
Isn't he the best?
The best. Yeah, he's
such a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's he does a lot more than I think people realize. Dana is obviously he's the face, and rightfully so. The dude, he was the one. It was basically his idea. Without Dana, getting the Fertittas together and buying the UFC back in 1993 or whatever it was, man, or I guess 1998 or whenever it was, we wouldn't be sitting here today, right? But Hunter's that guy. You'd be surprised how many guys deal directly with Hunter. Hunter's the only other guy who can really make a decision without asking Dana or other people. And
Dana, he mentions him quite a bit nowadays.
He does.
I mean, he'll throw out Hunter's name all the time, and it's just like, man, anytime I've been around him, such a good guy.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I'm not too vocal about it, but man, they take so much more flack than they should. The UFC, it's just they run a phenomenal business. Every single person that they have on staff is a high functioning, phenomenal individual.
They are.
And when you're in it, and you get to see that firsthand look too, because you get to be in a lot of rooms that most people wouldn't be able to go to, or the access that a lot of people wouldn't be able to as a fan looking. But me being in it, man, and that was a thing too. Leaving Bellator, I always thought, man, I'm like, there's no way the UFC is going to treat me better than Bellator. There's no way they're going to look at me like a indispensable asset and really take care of me and really care about me. I'm just going to be another number thrown into a system and churned out spit out the good way or spit out the bad way. And either he was or he wasn't good. And then I get to the UFC, I'm like, man, what the heck was I thinking, man? These guys are awesome.
The best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do get beat up a little bit, but they have a lot of fighters on the roster. I understand it's a business, but it seems like the guys who I know feel like they're taken care of.
It's a meritocracy.
Yeah.
Anything in life is and should be a meritocracy. You should not get anything for what you have not
haven't earned. Yeah.
And if you earn it, then eventually it works out for you.
Yeah.
And why complain today when next week you might be getting the thing that you're complaining about? But since you didn't complain, you get the thing that you know.
Yeah.
It's and that's the thing. These guys are dealing with this huge roster of people who, you know, they sign a contract, and then 2 fights later, they're like, "Hey, I'm worth more money," and they're like, "Dude, you signed a contract. What do you want from me?" You know, you know, you were happy whenever you signed it 2 fights ago, and now here we are. And so they're dealing with a tough daily.
Yeah.
Putting out fires. They put on a show every single weekend. Every single weekend there's something weird happening with a card. Someone doesn't make weight. Someone gets injured. Someone falls off. The venue there's all some kind of thing happening that they're constantly putting out fires. And that's why I like to be the guy who's pretty darn easy to handle.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty darn easy to deal with.
They can count on you. You show up, you're ready.
Yeah.
You're going to make weight.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Just do what you say you're going to do. Just be a professional.
Yeah.
Is it that much to ask for you to be a professional? If you're a professional fighter, you know,
that's
be a professional.
You know, Colby from my hometown, he gets beat up for that too, but he's different than you for sure, but he's always ready.
Yeah.
You know, so they know they can count on him. He's going to show up. He's going to make weight. He's going to, you know, he's got his thing that he does, but he's going to fight.
Yeah.
You know,
in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
December 16th, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be there?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm pumped for that one.
Yeah,
how do you think that's going to go?
I think Colby wins.
Really?
I hate to. I mean, it's tough because I would say you look at, you know, the Leon Edwards head kick of Kamaru. You're like, man, 100% luck, right? Just it happened. You probably should have lost that fight. You ended up throwing a head kick, but then obviously he beat Kamaru in the rematch. The rematch, which that definitely adds a little spice to it. Where I'm like, okay, maybe Leon is a little bit better than I thought, but Colby. Just like Dana always said, if Kamaru Usman did not exist, Colby Covington would have been the champion all those years, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Colby's got the skills. I think Colby's honestly just better than Leon in all the different areas. Yeah. And Leon's good. I just think Colby's got a motor. Colby is strong, but yet he doesn't seem like he cuts a lot of weight for the weight class.
No.
So he's got a great motor, great cardio. He's durable, great wrestling. Throws punches and bunches, and so it's going to be two southpaws going at it. So you'll see a little bit of a different dynamic than most of the time, because most of the time you got a southpaw and an orthodox guy, you're going to see a lot more power shots, but see you're going to have 2 southpaw guys going at it, so you're going to see a little bit more jabs. Yeah. So it'll be interesting, but I think Colby wins that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Leon has a power that Usman has. So, you know, that's kind of kept Colby at distance sometimes, because I think, you know, Kamaru got to where he could punch pretty freaking hard.
Kamaru hits freaking hard.
Yeah, so if Colby's not worried about that power, man, that's going to be rough for Leon. Yeah. You know,
what's really funny is watching these guys, the way that they either rise to the occasion or sometimes crumble depending on their last performance, or, you know, is Leon a guy who now becomes almost feeling like he's unbeatable in his own mind, right? Because it's so much more mindset than it is anything else.
Yeah,
he's got the belt now, beat Kamaru twice now. That's, you know, that should be enough to feel that kind of confidence where you're like, man, I'm the best guy in the world at 170 pounds. Is he that? You know, we'll see. If he is that in his mind, he's got a lot better chance of beating Colby than he would have if he didn't. But Colby's got that chip on his shoulder, man. I feel like Colby feels like he should have been champion in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, he's finally going to get the shot.
I know.
You know, well, he's had the shot, but now he's finally going to get the shot against somebody who's not Kamaru Usman.
Yeah, and I think Leon, maybe it's like Conor and you. I don't know if Colby would be his first pick to fight. You know, I mean, nobody wants to fight some hard wrestler, you know, that if they're not a wrestler themselves, because they're just like, oh my God, this is going to suck probably. Yeah. So it feels like
on the gas the whole time.
Yeah. It feels like it's the same as like maybe Conor would rather fight somebody besides you. I feel like Leon would rather fight somebody besides Colby, but I don't know. It's going to be
to see it.
Yeah. And it's crazy how like that one head kick changed 2 careers, you know, because Kamaru was basically unbeatable. And then there's a chink in the armor, and then got beat again. Yeah. And now he's got beat another time, you know, this last fight. And it's like, man, everything changed on one kick. It's just crazy.
Well, that's the momentum of this crazy sport, man. And it does show how the mindset of it and what your last performance will do to you.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where sometimes, you know, you heard Volkanovski talk about taking the time off, and that's why he took the Islam thing. You know, he kind of spiraled a little bit. I need to be in a training camp. I need to have something to strive for. And maybe that is a indication that he needs to do a little bit more of that work on himself to make sure, hey, fighting is what you do, but it's not who you be. Just like you talked about, this thing's going to end eventually. Who are you going to be when it does end?
Right.
And even me, though, I just got done admitting it's not easy to not have that target. It's like, it's very easy to have a fight date and have an opponent, but when you don't, luckily for me, I have other things outside the cage, businesses and stuff that I can kind of work on, and I get that different type of endorphin or different type of self-worth to build, because I want to be a successful businessman when I'm done fighing. So I kind of focus on that stuff too.
How's the businesses going?
They're good, man. We got Cram Nutrition. We got Hiatus Tequila. We was just down in Mexico a couple weeks ago. Saw the entire process from the agaves coming out of the ground to going into the distillery, the fermentation or the hornos, the ovens, into the fermentation tanks, and then into the bottle. So it was really, really cool. That's not 100% announced yet. That probably by the time this comes out, it will be, because it's
sweet
in a couple of days, but
or
a couple of weeks. But so that's been really good. Our founder of Hiatus, Christopher DeSoto, is a tequila aficionado, like the kind of guy where, in a world where there's so many kind of people just standing up tequila every day, especially tequila, because it's the fastest growing spirits category right now, and they're putting different flavors and vanillas and rectifications and glycerins and all these different things. This is the purest and additive free, cleanest tequila on the market, in our opinion. So we're excited about that. Cram Nutrition is doing really, really well. We're nationwide in Sprouts. Need to get some in your hunting packs when you're out there on the mountain.
Those are good.
They're good.
Those are really good.
They're good. So I'll hook you up with more of those.
Yeah, thank you.
And then Speed Fitness is still, we're about to hopefully, we just got it's not announced yet, but we just got a nice capital injection from a big private equity firm or another company in the fitness space. So we're going to be a competitor to the Tonal, similar to the Tonal. It's going to be a home and commercial piece of pulley, a system.
Oh, nice.
2,000 pounds of resistance. So just kind of helping being a part of these different companies, where I'm not just a sponsored athlete and I pose with a photo. It's like I'm in the board meetings, I'm in the meetings. I'll be in Florida next week, meetings with some distributors for Hiatus. I'll be going to Indianapolis, and this is the first week of December, to meet with distributors and these different culinary groups, and just being in the business, getting that firsthand look of what's it look like to be, I'm not the CEO or anything like that, but I could get to be in there with the CEO. How are these meetings happening? How do we go from point A to point B? How do we build a business? How do we raise awareness? How do we look at the bottom line, but also what's our mindset and what we want to accomplish with each company?
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, that takes, you put so much effort and attention into fighting, but giving that same effort into these businesses, that's pretty exciting.
Well, it's all, man, look where you're at today. It's like, who would have thought, if you were just a guy who was working at, in Oregon, and started putting on your phone and running and lifting and running and shooting and hunting. You weren't supposed to get to where you are just by doing like normal guy stuff, but the relationship capital, the relationships you've had, plus the consistency and the beacon of who you are, people want to be like you, and people want to buy the shoes that you have, and people want to drink the coffee that you drink, or they want to do what you do, right?
Right. And
you just keep a darn good reputation until the platform finally continues to explode, and then before you know it, people are like, man, I want to be just like him. I want to do what he does. I want to, and then when you can build cool businesses or have an awesome podcast and build what you're building with the reputation that you have, you're just trying to figure this thing out called life.
Yeah.
And having fun doing it your way, not getting put into a box, not having people tell you what to do and how to talk and what to wear and all these different things. It's, you do what you want to do.
Yeah. No,
it's a pretty fun thing.
You've done the same. I mean, you're a household name I mean, I just say, you know, I'm going to go train Chandler, and everybody knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you putting me through that workout today. That was so fun.
It was good. That was all Jeremy. Yes. All Jeremy. He formulates them all. Well, I actually got a new program coming. I have the my fitness app as well. So we're going to have him be our first trainer who's coming onto the fitness app as well now. So it's going to
nice.
Because I originally reached out to him because I was like, hey, dude, you're training all these NFL guys. He trains a bunch of high level NFL receivers and D-backs mainly, and tight ends like George Kittle. They do that tight end university here in town. I was like, man, you train these guys to be bigger, faster, and stronger. And I've always been the guy who I don't want to just lift weights. I want to be bigger, faster, and stronger, and try to be more athletic. So he's a stud, and he's fun to be around. So
he's got a great personality.
He loves what he does, man. Another one of those guys.
Tell.
His reputation is phenomenal. He's got a great passion for what he does, and when you find people like that, you're like, I want to be connected to you, dude.
Yeah, definitely.
Stick with me, man.
Yeah,
I need you in my life, you know.
Well, I'm pretty thankful that you opened up your home and your studio to me, and you shared your gym with me this morning. So I appreciate your friendship, Mike. Thank you.
You as well, man. Thank you.
All right, that's a Keep Hammering Collective from the road. Take care, guys.
Guys, it's Cameron Haynes here. I'm going to be giving away this brand new Ford Raptor 2023 fully loaded badass truck. You got 20-inch wheels, 35-inch tires. The tax man loves coming for that money, right? I'm giving away $10,000 cash to offset that for the winner. You get a truck and $10,000 in cash. I want you to win this brand new 2023 Ford Raptor. Enter to win, CameronHaynes.com. Keep hammering.
Every step I take, I move my truth. Every time they tell me stop, I use. Every comment, hate that makes my fuel. Gather up my energy and boom. I hear them talking, saying the way that I move is so reckless. That is a part of my mind I've been blessed with. Giving my blood, so I am relentless. My fault, they want someone to blame. They sent their hate, it fuels my pace. I am Roy Tough, I am the change, the fuel in dirt. Feeling like Cam Haynes.